Viewers are invited to drop their location and local time down below because trust me, by the end of this one, you'll want to tell the world where you were when you first heard it. Now picture the scene. Margaret Thornfield, queen of the HOA, struts around Pine Ridge Estates like she owns the sunrise. Daniel Harper, on the other hand, is just a quiet software developer who likes fishing on weekends and growing tomatoes without drama, yet somehow these two lives collide like a bad soap opera where the villain writes her own scripts. It starts small. A handwritten citation in cursive taped to Daniel's door with the flourish of someone who thinks she's part Supreme Court justice, part Jane Austen character. Unauthorized incursion into protected soil, it reads, protected from what worms gravity. Daniel laughs it off, but laughter only fuels Margaret's theatrical crusade. Within a week, there's another note, this time accusing him of improper trout bait, as if the creek fish are in some witness protection program. The kicker: Margaret claims the HOA has an environmental task force. Historians still argue whether she came up with that after binge-watching too much Discovery Channel, or if she just liked the way it sounded rolling off her tongue. Officially, the task force exists only in her imagination. Yet she talks about it as though she's chairing the United Nations. Soon the theater ramps up. Blurry Polaroids of Daniel and his waiters show up as supposed evidence. A teenager with a GoPro gets hired to stalk his property line like a pint-sized paparazzo. Margaret even hosts Nature's Court in her garage, complete with a hand-painted banner and a microphone system that ironically violates noise ordinances she herself once bragged about enforcing. If you've never seen a HOA president cosplay as Judge Judy, you've truly missed out on America's strangest neighborhood sport. Then comes the envelope: $30,000 in fines, 60 violations at $500 a pop, all based on her invented environmental codes. To sweeten the deal, she includes a cheerful payment plan charging 20% monthly interest. That's not enforcement. That's one PowerPoint slide away from organized crime. When Daniel points out it sounds suspiciously like usury, Margaret insists it's standard environmental practice. Right. And crocodile dung sunscreen was once standard too. Bright orange violation stickers sprout on his fence like Halloween decorations gone rogue. Infractions range from disturbing theoretical bird nesting to altering the water table by walking too heavily. At this point, Daniel has two options: either install a trampoline to avoid stepping on the ground or dig deeper into what Margaret is really up to. He chooses the latter. And with that decision, the storm quietly starts brewing. Daniel wakes early one morning, tired of being treated like the villain in a play Margaret keeps rewriting. He drives down to the county records office, the kind of building where the fluorescent lights hum like annoyed bees, and the clerks shuffle paper with the gravity of monks copying scripture. One file request later, he's staring at the truth: the protected land behind his house belongs to no HOA. It reverted to county ownership 2 decades ago after Southern Rail and Timber Corporation dissolved. Margaret has as much authority there as she does on the dark side of the moon. He copies every deed tax record and note he can find. Then he fires off packets: county commissioners, the sheriff's office, even the state attorney general. And just to twist the knife, he sends it to the local news station, the one that treats HOA scandals like the Super Bowl. On his way home, he stops by the bait shop, buys extra worms, and casts a line in that creek like nothing ever happened. 2 days later, Pine Ridge's HOA meeting is buzzing with the usual gossip and lemonade cookies when the room goes cold. 3 county investigators walk in unannounced. Margaret puffs herself up, blocking the doorway with her clipboard like a medieval knight wielding a plastic shield. She mutters about private civic protocol and closed session bylaws. One investigator, all business in a dark suit, replies evenly, "Ma'am, we're not here for the HOA meeting. We're here specifically for you." The color drains from Margaret's face faster than ink in a leaky printer. Behind her, residents exchange wide-eyed glances, suddenly realizing they might not have been paying HOA dues, they might have been bankrolling Margaret's spa weekends. Historians still argue whether she should have quit right there, taken the warning, and walked away. Instead, she doubles down, shrieking about her sacred duty to protect the biome. The investigators reveal she's fined neighbors over $80,000 for made-up infractions. Bird watching without permits, walking dogs too near wetlands, even planting the wrong wildflowers. Every dime has gone into a personal account labeled HOA Defense Fund, which conveniently covered a hot tub installation and a suspiciously sunny trip to Hawaii. Neighbors murmur. Someone gasps when the investigators mention frozen bank accounts. Another pulls out a phone, already texting the link for breaking news. And Daniel, leaning back against the wall, just thinks about how a quiet Saturday of fishing turned into the unraveling of Margaret's empire. The day of her arrest looks like a parody of suburban order unraveling in real time. Margaret, zip-tied to a folding chair on her own manicured lawn, screams about sovereign jurisdiction while deputies read her rights. A rogue drone buzzes overhead, capturing every shriek and flail. Neighbors gather behind the yellow tape, some with lawn chairs, others with phones held high. Within hours, the footage hits social media, 3 million views in a week. There she is in her embroidered Steward of the Earth windbreaker, writhing on the grass she once claimed was too sacred to step on. The investigation uncovers the depths of her theater. Fake conservation permits with bogus numbers. A fabricated National Environmental Safety Board complete with a cheap stock photo website and a donation button funneled to her personal PayPal. Even a notebook filled with forged signatures of county officials she practiced like a school kid rehearsing cursive. She had emailed threats from fake county accounts, convinced an elderly neighbor to hand over $2,000 for feeding ducks, and bullied a family into scrapping their above-ground pool under fear of federal water crimes. The trial is a circus. Margaret fires 2 lawyers and insists on representing herself, waving binders full of Wikipedia articles about wetlands as though they're sacred texts. She claims her actions fall under natural law and community stewardship principles. The judge doesn't even blink. The jury takes less than 2 hours, guilty on all counts. Fraud, impersonation of officials, theft by deception. Sentencing day brings the final collapse. The judge hands down 8 years in state prison, restitution of every dollar, and a lifetime ban from HOA boards. Margaret faints, carried out on a stretcher, mumbling about environmental protection zones through her oxygen mask. Pine Ridge Estates' Facebook page quietly swaps its logo to a sunset stock photo. No caption, no explanation. Digital silence for a neighborhood once ruled by her noise. Daniel goes fishing again. The creek flows the same as it always has. Frogs chirping like background singers in a comedy skit, dragonflies buzzing above the ripples. He can't help but smile at the absurdity. All he wanted was peace by the water, and somehow it toppled a paper crown built from forged seals and laminated lies. Historians still argue whether Margaret believed her own fantasy or just loved the power too much to let go. And so the storm fades. The lawn grows back where the arrest tore it up. The neighborhood hums again with kids on bikes and sprinklers arching over summer grass. Daniel sits on his porch, content knowing sometimes the most powerful act of rebellion is simply refusing to bow when someone waves a fake badge in your face. The story slows now, like the creek at dusk when the fish settle and the trees lean into shadow. Voices of the neighbors soften to a hum. No longer tense, no longer fearful, just people reclaiming the quiet that always belonged to them. The sharp edges of confrontation blur into memory, the way sunlight fades into a watercolor sky. Margaret's name drifts into the background, no longer a threat, just a cautionary tale whispered at barbecues when someone mentions HOA drama. Daniel's fishing line trembles once, twice before the stillness returns. He doesn't need to reel anything in tonight. Sometimes victory isn't loud or explosive. Sometimes it's a calm evening, a chair by the water, and the knowledge that justice in its strange, meandering way has already landed in the net. So rest easy. Let the story settle like twilight on the horizon. Close your eyes and imagine the sound of water against stone, steady and timeless, carrying troubles downstream into the dark where they lose their weight. Sweet dreams.